The dust-caked streets of Silver Creek buzzed with whispers as Jeremiah Blackwood, the most powerful cattle baron in the Texas Panhandle, strode into Murphy's general store. It was the autumn of 1873, and the railroad had just reached their growing town, bringing both prosperity and strangers from back east. Blackwood's weathered boots clicked against the wooden planks as he approached the glass display case, his steel-grey eyes fixed on 4 magnificent golden revolvers that gleamed under the oil lamp's flickering light. Store owner Murphy wiped his sweating palms on his apron. "Mr. Blackwood, those pieces just arrived from Chicago yesterday. Finest craftsmanship I've ever seen, sir. Real gold plating and ivory handles carved by master artisans." Blackwood lifted one revolver, testing its weight and balance. The weapon was beautiful beyond measure, worth more than most folks in Silver Creek earned in 5 years of hard labor. "How much for all 4, Murphy?" "Well, sir, that would be $800 for the complete set." Murphy's voice trembled slightly. Such money could buy a decent ranch with cattle. Without hesitation, Blackwood reached into his leather coat and produced a thick roll of bills. "Wrap them up proper. Each one gets its own case." Word spread quickly through Silver Creek's dusty streets about the cattle baron's unusual purchase. By evening, the entire town knew that Jeremiah Blackwood had given one golden revolver to each of 4 very different women. Margaret Sullivan, the refined banker's daughter, who had recently returned from finishing school in Boston. Rosa Martinez, the hard-working seamstress who supported her elderly parents. Elizabeth Thompson, the stern schoolmarm who had civilized half the wild children in town. And finally, Catherine "Cat" O'Malley, the red-haired saloon girl who worked at the Dusty Rose. The gift came with simple instructions delivered by Blackwood's foreman. "Mr. Blackwood requests that each lady do with her golden revolver whatever her heart desires. In 1 week's time, he wishes to see what choice each has made." The town's curiosity burned hotter than a branding iron. Everyone knew that Jeremiah Blackwood, now 52 and recently widowed after his wife's death from consumption, was the wealthiest man for 300 miles. His vast ranch stretched beyond the horizon, his cattle herds numbered in the thousands, and his influence reached the territorial capital. Why would such a man give away fortunes to 4 women so different in station and circumstance? Margaret Sullivan examined her golden revolver in the privacy of her father's mansion, turning it over in her gloved hands. The weapon felt foreign and dangerous, nothing like the delicate things she had learned to appreciate during her Eastern education. Rosa Martinez stared at hers while mending clothes by candlelight, wondering if this gift was some kind of cruel joke played by the wealthy upon the poor. Elizabeth Thompson locked hers away immediately, disturbed by its violent purpose despite its undeniable beauty. But Catherine O'Malley held hers up to the saloon's smoky lamplight and smiled with a gleam in her green eyes that made even the roughest cowboys step back. She had plans for her golden gift, plans that would surprise everyone in Silver Creek, especially the cattle baron who thought he knew what kind of woman worked in a frontier saloon. The week ahead would reveal not just what each woman chose to do with her golden revolver, but what kind of character lay beneath the surface of their very different lives. 3 days had passed since the golden revolvers were distributed, and the town of Silver Creek watched with growing fascination as each woman began to reveal her character through her actions. Margaret Sullivan was the first to make her choice known. On Wednesday morning, she appeared at the First National Bank where her father served as president, carrying the golden revolver in its original velvet-lined case. Her dark blue dress rustled as she approached the teller's window, her education evident in every measured step. "I wish to place this item in our strongest vault," she announced to her father's assistant. "It will serve as collateral for a business loan." Her father, Henry Sullivan, emerged from his office with raised eyebrows. "Margaret, what business venture could possibly require such collateral?" Margaret straightened her shoulders, displaying the confidence her Boston finishing school had instilled. "I intend to open Silver Creek's first proper library and reading room. This town needs culture and education beyond what the schoolhouse can provide. The railroad brings new families weekly, and their children deserve better than the dime novels and whiskey that currently dominate our entertainment." Henry Sullivan studied his daughter's determined expression. The golden revolver represented enough capital to fund such an ambitious project, and Margaret's Eastern education had certainly prepared her to manage it. By afternoon, the loan papers were signed, and Margaret had begun negotiations to purchase the empty building next to the church. Meanwhile, Rosa Martinez faced a different kind of decision. The seamstress worked from dawn until midnight, her nimble fingers creating and mending clothes for Silver Creek's growing population. Her small adobe house sat on the Mexican side of town, where families struggled to make ends meet despite the railroad's prosperity. Rosa's weathered mother, Elena, watched her daughter clean the golden revolver with careful attention. Mija, such a beautiful thing should not gather dust. But what purpose does a gun serve in the hands of someone who creates rather than destroys? Rosa smiled at her mother's wisdom. She had already made her decision, one that would honor both the gift's beauty and her family's values. That evening, she visited Carlos Herrera, the town's most skilled metalsmith and jeweler. Carlos examined the golden revolver with expert eyes, noting the intricate engravings and precious materials. "I can melt down the gold plating and fashion it into jewelry," he explained. "The ivory handles could become beautiful hair combs and decorative pieces. You would have enough valuable items to trade for what your family truly needs." Rosa nodded thoughtfully. "My parents need medicine for their arthritis, and my younger brother requires books for his schooling. Beauty should serve life, not death." Elizabeth Thompson approached her dilemma with the analytical mind that made her Silver Creek's most effective teacher. The schoolmom had spent 38 years believing that problems were solved through education and moral guidance, not violence. Yet she understood that her golden revolver represented more than a weapon. On Thursday evening, she visited Father Miguel at the Catholic mission, carrying the revolver wrapped in brown paper. The priest listened carefully as Elizabeth explained her internal struggle. "I cannot in good conscience keep an instrument of violence," she said, her voice steady despite her uncertainty. "Yet I recognize that Mr. Blackwood's gift deserves respect and careful consideration." Father Miguel suggested a solution that honored both her principles and the gift's value. "Perhaps this weapon could serve peace rather than violence. Our mission needs funds to expand the orphanage. Many children arrive on every train, some without families or means." Elizabeth agreed immediately. The golden revolver would be sold to a collector in San Antonio, and the proceeds would fund new beds, clothing, and educational materials for orphaned children. It was a choice that transformed an instrument of death into a source of life and hope. But Catherine O'Malley's plans remained mysterious. The saloon girl continued working at the Dusty Rose, serving drinks and entertaining the cowboys, railroad workers, and businessmen who frequented the establishment. She kept her golden revolver close, but nobody knew what she intended to do with such a magnificent gift. The anticipation in Silver Creek grew stronger with each passing day. Friday evening brought unusual excitement to the Dusty Rose Saloon. Catherine O'Malley worked behind the bar with her characteristic grace, her red hair catching the lamplight as she served whiskey to the usual crowd of cowboys and railroad workers. But tonight felt different. Several well-dressed strangers occupied a corner table, their expensive suits and polished boots marking them as visitors from back east. Jake Morrison, a regular customer who worked on Blackwood's ranch, leaned across the bar toward Catherine. "Cat, those fancy fellows been asking questions about you all evening. Something about rare weapons and collectors." Catherine smiled mysteriously, continuing to polish glasses with practiced efficiency. She had spent the entire week preparing for this moment, sending telegrams to contacts in Dallas, Houston, and even Chicago. Her golden revolver rested in its case upstairs in her small room above the saloon, but it would not remain there much longer. "Gentlemen," she called to the strangers, her voice carrying clearly above the saloon's noise. "I believe you're waiting to speak with me." The eldest of the three men stood and approached the bar. His grey beard was neatly trimmed, and his pocket watch chain gleamed with real gold. "Miss O'Malley, I am Professor Harold Whitman from the University of Chicago. My colleagues and I travelled here after receiving your telegram about a unique Colt revolver with historical significance." Catherine nodded, untying her apron. "Sarah, take over the bar," she instructed her fellow saloon girl. "Gentlemen, please follow me." The entire saloon watched in stunned silence as Catherine led the distinguished visitors upstairs to her private quarters. Word spread quickly through the crowd below. The saloon girl, who most folks dismissed as simply another frontier woman, was conducting business with university professors from Chicago. In her modest room, Catherine carefully opened the velvet-lined case containing her golden revolver. Professor Whitman and his colleagues examined the weapon with scholarly intensity, using magnifying glasses to study the intricate engravings and maker's marks. Extraordinary, whispered Dr. Benjamin Clark, the group's weapons historian. This is definitely the work of Giuseppe Sant'Angelo, the Italian master craftsman who created only 12 such pieces for wealthy American collectors in the 1860s. The gold plating contains rare metals, and these ivory handles feature carvings that tell the story of westward expansion. Professor Whitman looked up at Catherine with newfound respect. Miss O'Malley, how did you recognize the historical value of this piece? Catherine sat in her room's only chair, her green eyes reflecting intelligence that most Silver Creek residents had never noticed. My father was a traveling scholar before he died of fever when I was 15. He taught me to read Latin, Greek, and French. He also educated me about art, history, and valuable antiquities. When Mr. Blackwood gave me this revolver, I immediately recognized the craftsmanship as European, not typical frontier gunsmithing. Dr. Clark exchanged glances with his colleagues. We represent several museums and private collectors who would pay handsomely for such a rare piece. This revolver belongs in a collection where its historical and artistic value can be properly appreciated. Catherine had anticipated this moment throughout the week. She had researched the weapon's origins, contacted experts, and negotiated terms through carefully worded telegrams. The offer these men presented exceeded even her highest expectations. The University of Chicago is prepared to offer $3,000 for this piece, Professor Whitman announced. It would become part of our permanent collection documenting American frontier history. The amount represented more money than most Silver Creek residents would see in a lifetime. Catherine could purchase property, start a legitimate business, or even travel back east to continue her interrupted education. But her plans extended beyond personal gain. I accept your offer, Professor Whitman, with one condition. Half of the payment must be donated to the Silver Creek Mission for their orphanage expansion. The other half will fund the establishment of this town's first lending library. The professors agreed immediately, impressed by Catherine's combination of business acumen and charitable spirit. As they completed the transaction, preparing the Golden Revolver for its journey to Chicago, word of the Saloon Girl's remarkable deal spread throughout Silver Creek like wildfire. Catherine O'Malley had transformed Blackwood's test into an opportunity that would benefit the entire community while securing her own future. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp, autumn air that made the Texas sky seem endless. Jeremiah Blackwood sat on the wraparound porch of his ranch house, sipping coffee from a tin cup and watching his foreman prepare for the day's work. The week had passed exactly as he had planned, and now the time had come to witness the results of his unusual test. His housekeeper, Martha Webb, emerged from the kitchen carrying fresh biscuits and preserves. She had worked for the Blackwood family for 20 years, first for Jeremiah's late wife Sarah, and now for the widowed cattle baron who seemed lost without his life's companion. Mr. Blackwood, the whole county's talking about those golden revolvers, Martha said, setting the plate on the wooden table. Folks are saying you've gone peculiar since Miss Sarah passed. Jeremiah smiled slightly, his weathered hands wrapped around the warm coffee cup. Maybe I have, Martha, or maybe I've finally started seeing things clearly. The truth was that Jeremiah Blackwood's test had nothing to do with madness or grief, though both had certainly affected him since Sarah's death 6 months earlier. During his wife's final weeks, as consumption slowly claimed her life, she had made him promise something that seemed impossible for a man of his practical nature. "Promise me, Jeremiah," Sarah had whispered from her sickbed, her once bright eyes dimmed by illness. "Promise me you'll find a woman who sees beyond wealth and status, someone with character and intelligence, not just beauty or breeding. This ranch needs a woman who understands that true worth comes from the heart." Jeremiah had promised, though he wondered how a cattle baron could possibly judge a woman's character without the complications of his wealth influencing her behavior. The golden revolvers had been his solution, a test that would reveal each woman's true nature through her choices. By 10 o'clock, his foreman, Danny Rodriguez, returned from town with detailed reports about each woman's decision. Danny had spent the week discreetly observing and gathering information, as Jeremiah had requested. Mr. Blackwood, Miss Sullivan used her revolver as collateral for a business loan. She's opening a library and reading room next to the church. Already has contractors working on the building, Jeremiah nodded approvingly. Margaret's choice showed practical intelligence and community spirit, exactly what he had hoped to discover. Miss Martinez sold hers to the jeweler, Carlos Herrera, had the gold made into jewelry and hair combs that she traded for medicine and school books for her family. Smart woman, that one, knows how to turn beauty into practical help. Another excellent choice, Jeremiah reflected. Rosa had demonstrated wisdom, family loyalty, and resourcefulness. Miss Thompson gave hers to Father Miguel. They sold it to some collector in San Antonio, and the money's going to expand the mission orphanage. New beds and school books for the children arriving on every train. Elizabeth's decision revealed the moral character and selflessness that Jeremiah had suspected lay beneath her stern exterior. And Miss O'Malley, Jeremiah asked, though he suspected her choice would be the most surprising. Danny grinned widely. Boss, that saloon girl fooled everybody in Silver Creek. Turns out she's educated, speaks 3 languages, and knows about art and history. She identified her revolver as some rare collector's piece, made by a famous Italian craftsman. Sold it to university professors from Chicago for $3,000. Jeremiah's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. $3,000 was more than he had paid for all 4 revolvers combined. But here's the remarkable part, Danny continued. She donated half the money to the mission orphanage, and the other half to fund the town's lending library. That woman just turned your gift into the biggest charitable contribution Silver Creek has ever seen. Jeremiah set down his coffee and stared across the vast expanse of his ranch. In 1 week, 4 women had revealed their character through his test, but one had exceeded every expectation he possessed. Catherine O'Malley had demonstrated intelligence, business acumen, generosity, and a hidden education that suggested depths he had never imagined. She had taken his gift and multiplied its value while simultaneously benefiting the entire community. Danny, I need you to deliver invitations to all 4 ladies. Tell them Jeremiah Blackwood requests the honor of their presence for Sunday dinner tomorrow. We're going to have ourselves a proper conversation. But as Martha began preparing for unexpected guests, Jeremiah found his thoughts returning again and again to the red-haired saloon girl who had just proven that character and intelligence could flourish in the most unexpected places. Sunday afternoon brought an unprecedented gathering to the Blackwood Ranch. The dining room, which had remained largely unused since Sarah's death, now bustled with activity as Martha Webb prepared the finest meal Silver Creek had seen in months. The long oak table, crafted from timber hauled from East Texas, gleamed under the chandelier that Jeremiah had imported from New Orleans for his late wife. Margaret Sullivan arrived first, accompanied by her father in their polished carriage. Her dark blue dress and matching hat reflected her Eastern education, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to formal social occasions. Rosa Martinez followed shortly after, wearing her finest Sunday dress that she had sewn herself, the intricate embroidery showcasing her exceptional needlework skills. Elizabeth Thompson walked from town, her practical boots clicking against the ranch's wooden porch steps. Despite her stern reputation, she seemed genuinely pleased to be included in such an unusual gathering. But all eyes turned when Catherine O'Malley stepped down from the hired buggy that had brought her from Silver Creek. Gone was the typical saloon girl attire. Instead, Catherine wore a simple but elegant green dress that complemented her red hair, which was arranged in a sophisticated style that revealed the refined woman beneath the frontier exterior. Her transformation was so complete that several ranch hands stopped their work to stare in amazement. Jeremiah Blackwood greeted each woman personally, his manner courteous but reserved. At 52, he remained an imposing figure, his silver hair and weathered face telling the story of decades spent building an empire from raw Texas grassland. But today, something different gleamed in his steel-grey eyes. Ladies, I owe each of you an explanation for my unusual gift, Jeremiah began as Martha served roasted beef, fresh vegetables from the ranch garden, and bread still warm from the oven. The golden revolvers were a test, though not the kind you might expect. Margaret dabbed her lips with the linen napkin. A test of our character, Mr. Blackwood. Precisely, Miss Sullivan. You see, my late wife Sarah made me promise to find a woman of true character before I considered remarrying. But how does a man of means judge a woman's heart when his wealth inevitably influences her behavior? Rosa nodded understanding. So, you gave us something valuable to see what we would do when we believed nobody was watching our choices. Each of you revealed remarkable character through your decisions, Jeremiah continued. Miss Sullivan, your library will educate generations of children. Miss Martinez, your practical wisdom provides for family while honoring beauty. Miss Thompson, your charitable spirit gives hope to orphaned children. Elizabeth smiled slightly. But Miss O'Malley's choice surprised you most, didn't it? All eyes turned to Catherine, who had remained quiet throughout the meal. She met Jeremiah's gaze directly, her green eyes reflecting intelligence and strength that most of Silver Creek had never recognized. "Miss O'Malley," Jeremiah said carefully, "your transformation of my gift exceeded every expectation I possessed. You demonstrated business acumen, historical knowledge, charitable spirit, and wisdom that would benefit any endeavor. May I ask where you acquired such education?" Catherine set down her fork and spoke with quiet dignity. "My father, Professor Patrick O'Malley, taught classics at the University of Virginia before the war destroyed his position. We traveled west when I was 15, hoping to start fresh, but he died of fever in Kansas. I've been supporting myself ever since, but I never stopped reading, learning, or believing that circumstances don't define character." Jeremiah felt his heart stir in a way it hadn't since Sarah's death. This woman possessed not only intelligence and beauty, but the strength to survive hardship without losing her principles or education. "Miss O'Malley, would you consider leaving your position at the Dusty Rose to become governess for the ranch? I plan to adopt several orphans from the mission, and they would benefit from your education and character." Catherine's eyes sparkled with understanding. They both knew this offer represented something beyond employment, a chance to build something meaningful together, while honoring the memory of the woman who had inspired Jeremiah's unusual test. "Mr. Blackwood, I would be honored to help you provide those children with education, stability, and love. Sometimes the most valuable gifts come disguised as tests." As the autumn sun set over the vast Texas landscape, Jeremiah Blackwood realized that his wife's final wish had been granted in the most unexpected way. The saloon girl's choice had revealed a woman worthy of sharing both his life and his commitment to building something lasting in the American frontier. The Golden Revolvers had served their purpose, transforming 4 lives while revealing that true character shines brightest when tested by genuine choice.